Welcome to the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. My name is Ed Delgado. I'm the CEO of the 5-Star Institute, and we're going to spend some time today talking about matters of interest as it relates to community stabilization, revitalization, and community development. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have Chris Plummer, who's the Managing Director of Wingspan Real Estate Network, a special servicing organization under the Wingspan Portfolio Advisors umbrella. And we also have Yves Mombeleur, who is responsible for seller relations at the Neighborhood Community Stabilization Trust. National Community Stabilization Trust. Before we get started, let's spend a moment talking about the markets and what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and where we think we're headed. In effect, we're dealing with excessive tension in the marketplace that's impacting what was once a very stable relationship between buyers and sellers. In effect, the markets are frozen, supply is in excess, we are experiencing a crisis of confidence despite the fact that there's enormous liquidity in the marketplace and excessive inventory across the nation. It's because of this tension that the market remains wounded and credit remains frozen. To give you a sense of perspective, in a balanced housing supplier and demand condition, economics suggest that you should experience an 8-month inventory of supply. If you look at Southeast Florida and the Miami-Dade metropolitan statistical area, you'll see that there is over a 24-month supply of inventory. And that condition, depending on where you are in the United States, replicates itself. So it's problematic. If we look to the future, we know that the interested future home buyers of houses in the United States remains skeptical on the value of home ownership, and that is to say that those between the ages of 26 and 34 in all likelihood will not be buying houses at the same rate that they have been in the last decade. More so, they'll look towards rental properties. So that creates an issue for the housing industry in general. And what it boils down to is that we respectively have to become more creative in the disposition of properties, the creation of home ownership, and the value proposition that it has to buyers, but also to sellers. So what we're going to do today is take a look at a unique opportunity that has presented itself in recent months, and it's called the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. In effect, these are federal funds that can be assigned to specific geographical regions in the United States to aid in the development of a mortgage through down payment assistance. It can be allocated towards short sales, but really provides us as an industry, as a collective, the impetus to reignite the housing market. And we wanted this to be a very frank conversation, so you may hear us cut in and out of each other's commentary, but I think it will present for a very informative session for the group. So first up, Yves Mombeleur. Yves, as I mentioned earlier, is a director at the National Community Stabilization Trust, whose mission is predominantly to revitalize some of the communities through the application of federal funds and programs like the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. And Yves will be talking us through a series of graphs that demonstrate the allocations of these funds. Yves?
Thank you, Ed, and hello to everyone. NSP, Neighborhood Stabilization, as that denotes, it really tells you that stabilizing neighborhoods, that's a local effort. It's not a national effort. It starts at the local level. The NSP funds that I'll be speaking about, it was not meant to be the panacea to cure all the housing ills, but rather to act as a catalyst to ensure that there's some type of monetary infusion to help stimulate the housing or lack of housing purchases in America. So we'll start off with Neighborhood Stabilization 1. NSP 1, we'd like to just really talk about NSP and kind of say there are 3 different things, but there really are just one funding but 3 different sources. In NSP 1, as we like to reference it, there was approximately $3.9 billion that was allocated to the various states. The allocation process was simply based on the level of foreclosures, delinquency, and late to the various markets. So it was a non-competitive grant, and then these localities simply received the money based on their risk scores. And the money went to a lot of different groups, but really you're talking about a good cash infusion of $3.9 billion. With the NSP1 was part of the Housing and Recovery Act of 2008, and with that one we've spent nearly 78%, but almost 100% has been allocated. The key criteria of NSP1, as the money is spent, the recipients are able to what's called get program income. The program income means the money that they receive after they sell the properties, they're supposed to turn around and use it to reacquire properties. And so it's not just a one-time shot, I'm buying properties, I'm moving on, but rather I'll be able to buy properties, take the program income, buy additional properties while communities are being more stabilized, housing prices continue to increase, and there'll be better market demand. NSP2 came out as part of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. With NSP2, there was a slightly smaller amount. It was approximately $2 billion. $2 billion of which 29% has been obligated as of this date, but with the overall goal to get 50% of those funds obligated by February of 2012. NSP2 was quite a bit different than NSP1. With NSP2, it was a competitive grant where nonprofits, localities, and various other agencies were able to really write grants, and based on how well the grants were written and accepted, and also based on the risk scores, they were able to receive funding. So the funding went to a lot of different groups, and it was hoping that by getting the nonprofits directly involved with receiving the money, that they too become more actively engaged. And right now we're at the cusp of having NSP2 being obligated to its entirety sometime in maybe 2012, but there's still a lot of money that's available out there for these nonprofits and also the localities to acquire the properties, rehab, and resell. There's also NSP3, which came result out of the Dodd-Frank Consumer Protection Act and the Wall Street Reform Act. NSP3, it's a smaller allocation. We're looking at approximately $1 billion that went out. Now, the $1 billion, it went really back out to the NSP1 recipients. The key piece here, they want the NSP3 to go back and look at the NSP1 areas, but really focus on in more concentrated efforts. If they are focused on more concentrated efforts, their objective is to try to get these really bad, deteriorating properties up and running and become more viable by really focusing on those areas. With NSP3, you nearly have just 13% obligated, but it's fully going to be rolled out in sometimes to 2012. In addition to the NSP 1, 2, and 3 that you're hearing about, there's been a lot of activity, especially as of late, with the Project Rebuild, or otherwise known as the Jobs Bill in Congress. Though it's having a struggle being passed in both houses, the key piece for us to understand is that from the congressional perspective, they are looking at trying to get more funds out for the communities to utilize. The important thing to note is the Project Rebuild, as I like to call it, it's focusing on jobs. The unintended consequences, but the great consequence of NSP1 was approximately 88,000 jobs were created out of this effort. So we can only imagine if you have a program with a specific job creation as its mandate, how many jobs will be created. Whether you're in the East Coast or West Coast or all points in between, it's readily agreed upon that you need to create more jobs to help stabilize the community. So with this key bill that's out there's floating, if we can get it passed, that means there's going to be more funding for the sole purpose of acquisition, rehab, and resale, but with the focus being on really job creation. So that's where we stand right now. The overall history of this NSP is just there to give some background information and help people understand that there is a tremendous amount of money out there, because last time I checked, whenever we're speaking in the billion of dollar range, that is a lot of money. So there's money out there that's designed to help individuals acquire properties, individuals also the nonprofits, but some of the NSP1 and NSP2, they've had what's called direct-to-consumer program. Well, instead of doing using the money for acquisition, rehab, and resale, they're actually providing down payment assistance and closing costs to consumers, so the consumers can use those NSP funds as long as it's within those targeted zip codes, and as long as the recipient is someone that's 120% or below of the area median income, they can use those funds to secure housing in the form of down payment assistance and closing costs. So that's really what's happening in the industry right now. We're just encouraging more players to participate and use these funding sources, and especially with the real estate community. When they hear NSP, it's not the first time that they're hearing about it, that it is a viable funding source for acquisition, and the overall purpose is trying to stabilize the community by really looking at a neighborhood function first and foremost.
A quick question. This is Chris Plummer with Wingspan. NSP has traditionally been for REO purchases. Now it's being opened up to short sales?
Correct. When NSP 1 originally came out, they were looking at strategically just by purchasing REO. But as more and more groups started getting involved, they had to make some changes. It's a work in progress originally, and they made some changes to it. One of the great changes to it was, in addition to buying REO properties directly from the foreclosed entity, you can purchase it from what's called as aggregators, whereas a group like NCST, we can be an aggregator and buy properties and then disseminate it, though that's not what we do on a day-to-day basis. And also you can use the NSP dollars to purchase properties via short sale, because as more and more localities are realizing that there is a severe reduction on the available of REO properties, but yet there's still a high number on delinquencies, there's still a lot of people is trying to rid of their houses, that short sales becomes a very viable channel to purchase the properties using the NSP model.
So, and this is Ed, let's talk a little bit about that. These are strategic placements where these funds are. They're not just randomly thrown out there, right?
Correct. It's really based on the states that have the highest foreclosure risk scores. States like California and Florida, they received a lot of money, but that's great. But it also means that they have the highest problems dealing with foreclosures and inventory. And then the other states, you know, if you can follow the track and say where are the states that have had the most difficult time during this foreclosure crisis, those are the ones that have received the most amount of money, and rightly so.
Okay, we're moving on. Just real quickly, we've certainly formed a partnership. It's one of the reasons we're on this call today. And part of that partnership is with Wingspan. Wingspan is one of the largest, fastest growing specialty component servicers in the nation. We specialize in handling seriously delinquent loans, also specialize in managing, facilitating, negotiating short sales. And we have over 80% success rate dealing with returning loans to performing status and working with short sales as well. Also awarded Servicer of the Year, and really excited to be able to work with NSP, especially as it's been opened up now to short sales. And to do all this, to help manage this, to help open up Wingspan and their services to the real estate profession, we have started what's called the Wingspan Real Estate Network. And also this allows us to partner with the NSP as well.
Now, Chris, can you just, for the audience, further explain the relationship between the trust and your job at helping us facilitate the short sales? I think it's very important for them to understand the relationship that we've engaged in and how it's beneficial.
We, it's very simple in terms of we just have a partnership where we manage, facilitate, negotiate the short sales, and an agent who is a member of WREN simply brings their short sale listing to us. We start the process with the short sale. We upload information on that listing into our database, which we share with NSP, and NSP makes that database available to its investors. And if an investor is interested, we go down the track with that investor as the buyer of the property.
So let's spend a moment talking about how short sales intentionally help to stabilize the community. I mean, a lot's been said that there are not enough short sales going on right now, and it's not for a lack of investors. It's just that the funds don't seem to be there, right, in many aspects. So can the two of us or three of us talk about how NSP pumps those funds into those markets.
Sure.
We'll go to Yves first on that one.
Yeah, with the key thing that any of the NSP recipients, they can utilize their funds towards the acquisition of short sales. One of the challenges that we face as the trust is getting the list of available short sales directly from the servicers because of various privacy restrictions. So I won't know when someone becomes available for short sales, but that's why this partnership with the specialized services like Wingspan is so important, because they're able to assist us with the properties that they're working directly with the servicers under short sales. And as we get the short sales, they're able to do I call it the grunt work of negotiating and working through making sure that this is a viable short sale to our buyers at really no additional cost to our buyers as well. And ironically, I was just speaking to a couple of servicers this morning, and they were sharing with me the new data that just came out this morning on the number of short sales. All the servicers are very happy, and they want to promote that they're doing more and more short sales. And we're seeing the shift from REO to short sales, and we really want to capitalize by showing that in addition to making the shift, there's a lot of money that's out there that can purchase the short sales property, but it has to be done in a way that it makes sense to our buyers, where it's fast, it's convenient, and of course the pricing is always a critical issue.
I think you hit it on the head right there. Fast and convenient. Our process that we're able to flow through with WREN and Wingspan managing and facilitating the short sales helps us become very fast and efficient, and also having the support of NSP funds and investment buyers behind it.
So let's talk about
Makes
that.
it win-win.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What makes WREN so different than anybody else? Because here's when you take a look at the industry, a lot of companies are advertising, we could do it better, we could do it cheaper, and yet you don't see the volume of short sales that you think would be indicative of the marketplace. And yet WREN seems to have found a formula that really makes it work in terms of the placement, the assignment, and the expediency of resolution. Can we talk about that?
I think the number one thing that works for us is that we are a servicer. We have relationships with all the other servicers. This is what we do for a living. We have hundreds of staff who are focused on this from all different angles and components. There's nothing that surprises us with the short sale. We've been there and done it before. And we speak the language. I think whenever you get into the actually facilitating and negotiating a short sale, it's very effective to have a servicer working on your team for you as a real estate agent, negotiating with that other servicer.
Yeah, and that's so important, because you often hear that, in particular, real estate agents can have a buyer completely ready to engage, and yet they can't get the facts and figures from the servicer. They can't get the right person on the phone. They climb up the ladder in terms of trying to escalate the matter, and the seller walks and the sale dies. But WREN takes all the guesswork out of that. Is that?
Exactly. And we also have all the various guidelines, rules, regulations for every servicer, every investor, every portfolio or tranche within those investors or servicers. We know all the various paperwork that's required and all the process and flows that they need to go through, and we submit, as we say, ready to be approved packages, and that's
Ready to be approved, which is unheard of.
Yes.
So they're basically pre-qualified, all bundled up and ready to go.
Yep.
So Yves, how does that help? When we talk a little bit about community stabilization, talk to me for a moment on having that level of timely response and execution. What does that lend to a market that needs help?
Well, the expediency is really priceless, because the servicers want to do short sales. The buyers want to get rid of the property by a short sale. We have interested recipients, but yet there seems to be a delay in getting short sales. We've all heard the historical nightmares associated with it. Right now, within the servicing industry, they're applauding themselves if they can get a 50% conversion rate, which we all know is not great efficiency between the start and the completion, but they're happy for 50% efficiency rate. And that's simply because a lot of the short sale packages that they receive simply not bona fide short sales. And by short sales, we mean someone who has already completed the whole home retention lost mid-process, and they've been denied, and there's no ability to retain their home, but the servicers are presenting to them as a viable option to move their properties by a short sale, thereby saving the additional time for the stabilization effort. Because these are government funds, there is a timeline associated with it, and there's a process. They can't go after a property in perpetuity. They have to have a firm commitment. The properties will be able to close in a certain amount of time. So by producing ready-to-approve short sale, I think that should be a lingo that's trademarked, because it's going to be very popular, because that just means from the servicer's perspective, they just have to review the file one time, look at it, get everything they need, make a determination, and approve it. We know as part of HAFA in the government-approved sector that now servicers, they're not waiting until it's way too late to approve a short sale. As soon as someone is denied a home retention option, the servicers are immediately engaged internally trying to set pricing, determining what would be the acceptable price for the short sale. Now, if we can also take advantage of that by providing an interested buyer immediately after there isn't any type of home retention options, then that's really just pushing everything much faster, and then we get a win. For a stabilization effort, it means that the properties don't have to go to foreclose. It means that there doesn't have to be a vacancy period. In some of the areas in the country, Ed, it's really more a vacancy issue than a foreclosure issue, because properties have been foreclosed, but they're vacant. And when there's vacant properties, it becomes attractive nuisances, because children, whomever, are thinking no one cares about this property, so they're more likely to do vandalism. And if that takes place, that means the end buyer ends up having to spend more money to stabilize the community. So it's actually causing our buyers, the neighborhood stabilization buyers, to use their money more strategically and get better quality of properties. And if they're buying better, getting good pricing, less rehab, then they can stretch the dollars to do more, and thereby hitting a greater geographic area. So that's really the win as the short sales.
Right, and the vacancy rate in this country on foreclosures is pushing north of 30%. Right, so you have contributing factors that add to the erosion of the communities. This program, I do want to go back to Chris for a moment, though, because it just seems as though we've touched on something that really presents opportunities for all parties involved, right? The real estate agents get the connectivity with the servicers. The servicers avoid the loss exposure because they're preempting REO through short sale.
Yeah.
The communities get the benefit of turning a vacant property into something owner-occupied very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the future for this program? Can you tell me?
I think it's an exciting future.
Yep.
I think it's just part of our quality control process, to where, again, we submit files that are ready to be approved. And I think that is one of the biggest hurdles right now within the short sale arena, between the short sale being approved and having that type of exit for this property versus it going into foreclosure. And I think that can have such a huge impact on the marketplace.
Yves, can we go back to some of those graphs we were looking at for a moment? And can you walk us through the allocation for a second? Why don't we start with NSP1 and fold out from there?
And keep in mind, we'll provide a link to all of these slides here at the end, so everybody can download these.
Yeah, but absolutely. I think that's important for people to see where are the funds, in what amounts are the funds available, and walk through the various allocation points.
Sure. In NSP1, if you're looking at the allocation, as stated before, approximately $9 billion was allocated based on the formula set up by HUD. If you look at the graph, you'll see that, of course, the states with the highest need, it was a need-based program, they received a whole lot of money. Now, with NSP1, unfortunately, most of those monies have not only been obligated, they've been spent. But hopefully there'll be program income that will be coming back into the fold, so all the recipients from NSP1, they'll be able to continue to buy properties in perpetuity by using those program funds, buy properties, sell the properties, continue to buy properties. So that's where we are with the NSP1. The target areas of NSP, I just had a slide that shows just the largest allocations within the states. And just so you can take a quick look at it, look at the targeted areas, because you want to buy strategic purchases. But I want people to look at this slide, but also let them understand that because this is supposed to act as a catalyst for the communities, if they're using NSP funds to buy in one particular area, that may cause another area that may not be identified as a target area, cause others to show interest, because as we're stabilizing the communities, then others may have a greater interest in buying in those areas. So that's supposed to stimulate buying all across. With NSP2, this is where it was really based on competitive grants. The nonprofits, the localities, they had to write formal submission plans where they want to spend their areas and how they want to spend the money. Once again, the same states that are hardest hit by the foreclosure, they received a tremendous amount of money, and they're using it. But with NSP2, with the nonprofit involvements, now they have those funds directly to use. They don't have to be a sub-grantee relationship with the locality, but they have their own funds to use and create their efforts. And I think this was the administration's attempt to show the local effort of NSP and the local effort associated with housing. And if you look at the specific target areas in subsequent slides, you see the target areas are somewhat reduced, but once again, people are still buying outside those target areas, because if I live next door to a target area, that may make my area more attractive, because now the area that's adjacent to me, it stabilizes, it revitalizes greater properties of people to buy, and there's going to be the natural overflow to my properties. NSP3, with those in the map, you can definitely see the funding source that went to the localities. It's a small pool of funds. When I hear our buyers saying that, well, NSP is not a lot of money, it's just $1 billion, it's still a lot of money. It's $1 billion that's out there directly for the acquisition and rehab in really specific markets. Those markets are consistent where there's the highest need.
I don't know of any real estate agent that wouldn't consider $1 billion investment a small change, though, especially in these challenging times, right?
That's good. Those are the real estate agents we want to work with, because
you want to be the real estate agent who gets into those funds.
And really, some of these, I think one of the biggest pushback has been that, well, these properties aren't really higher value properties, but it's just a numbers game. It's like real estate, that you can go in, you can purchase a lot of the properties. You can do quite well because there's a lot more work to be done. And I just want to really quickly talk back about the whole relationship with Wingspan and the importance of these complete packages. I remember my days back of underwriting. Underwriters love to get a complete package, because that means it's less headaches for them. One-time review, accept, keep moving on to the next. And that's really the key benefit, is that if we can get complete packages, one-time review in and out, then success is going to continue to breed further success, and the servicers will be extremely happy, because instead of spending time asking for documents, begging for pieces of information, collateral information, it's a complete package. You know it's coming from the trust in partnership with Wingspan. It's going to be good. Approve it.
Yes.
So why don't we take a moment and recap a little bit here. I think we have a complete understanding of the lay of the land. But if I can turn to Chris again, how does it work, Chris? Explain to me how you can become a member of WREN. What are some of the value propositions? I mean, look, here's what we hear all the time. Money's tight, right? It's very difficult to get by. Sales are down. We're heading into the fourth quarter. Things don't look good right now, right? And real estate agents, quite frankly, are bearing the brunt of this crisis. So explain to the audience why WREN is such a good fit. How can they tap into these funds? How can they get these leads? How can they build their pipeline? How can they grow their business? How can they stay afloat in these challenging times?
Well, one thing, go here to a separate slide, is thanks to our partnership with the 5-Star, there's this upcoming Impact Conference, which is very exciting. It's December 4th through 6th, correct, here in Dallas, at the Dallas Omni Hotel, which will basically, I think the whole conference, you might be able to say more, but most of the conference, I believe, is actually focused on the NSP program. There'll be a lot of trainings and seminars and such on NSP.
Yeah.
And through our partnership, we've arranged it to where we're going to be able to pass along some benefits to agents who want to become part of WREN, to where agents who sign up for the Impact Conference get $400 off the admission to the conference, which brings it down from $995 to $595. They also get a free membership to WREN, which is a $245 value.
So they come to the conference, they get acceptance into the WREN network, which provides them the leads. So the ROI, or potentially gets them leads for short sales, right? And they get the...
Not only that, they also get to be part of the WREN network where they can bring their short sales to Wingspan to have them facilitate and negotiate for them.
Right, and escalate them throughout the servicer network. So this is a great opportunity. So the ROI for an attendee is what? One? You get one sale, you cover the cost of the event, the membership, and everything else?
We're also throwing in, we're doing a RESPA training while at the conference. That will be free, which is, for this training, is I think $150 value.
Well, the RESPA training is important because it's continuing ed credit.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of upside to attend this event. Walk us through the WREN network one more time if you can, Chris, because I really think that when we talk about the net, and there are a lot of networks that are out there, there has to be a distinguishing factor of benefit that says why WREN over anybody else. What does it mean to me as an agent? If I have limited funds and I have to invest it someplace, why should I give it to WREN?
Good question. I think that the key differentiator is that this is a network where you can have a servicer work for you as a real estate agent for a change. Where through WREN, you can have Servicer of the Year, 2009, 2010, be part of your team and manage, facilitate, negotiate short sales for you. I think that's the big differentiator for us.
Good. And Yves, in terms of attracting this audience, and Chris touched on education as being a central and core component. I know, Chris, you're going to close with some of the entertainment value for this event. Why do you think it's important for agents to come out and learn about NSP, learn about the work that's being done at the Trust, learn about the availability of funds in these select markets? Why is now more important than ever?
I think you captured it quite well, actually, because the time is ripe. There continues to be a lot of notice of defaults. We've seen a reduction on the available REO inventory that's out there. This is just yet another pathway. At the conference, we're going to be having our servicer partners and buyers there as well, so they can have the ability to interact with them directly. And I always prefer that if you're going to get information about a program, rather than get it through second or third hand, go directly from the source. And we'll be there on site to provide information on the NSP program and be able to answer questions and show the real estate community how it's going to benefit them, because what we do is we help stabilize communities. As communities become more stabilized, it just creates a better opportunity for the real estate networks, because pricing is going to improve. There's going to be more activity in purchases, and those are the things that we want to bring to the table and put people in touch with.
You just said pricing is going to improve. How so?
Well, as we stabilize a market, the infusion of NSP dollars going in, you're buying the properties, but it's not going to be a buy and hold and wait for the market to rebound. It's buying and then doing immediate rehab, and then after you have that property, then there should be increased value, and then using these our NSP buyers on what they're looking for. They're looking to buy in the most difficult markets where there's the highest concentration, and as you buy and help create stimulus, then that's going to help stabilize the community.
Thanks. Chris, what do you think?
I think it's an exciting opportunity. We're excited to be part of it, and really looking forward to the Impact Conference. And again, you can there's great benefits available here to anyone who joins, signs up for the conference through WREN. Pretty much can get majority or most of the admission cost savings, get free membership to WREN, get continuing education credits, also get discounts on other 5-star institute trainings. Great savings opportunity.
You know, one thing I want to be careful of is this conversation is intended to be informative and important. It shouldn't be an infomercial for the conference. So I do want to say some things about the benefits here. These are, as you've heard me say throughout my remarks this morning, these are trying times, and I think what we're attempting to do is create opportunity for the industry. If you don't know about these funds, you need to. If you need your continuing education credits, you're pushing up against the year-end deadline, you can get them. If you want to learn about the 203K program, those courses will be there. Networking is very, very, very essential to any business platform that a real estate agent has, and you have that opportunity to network. You don't want to charge folks $1,500, $2,000 to come to a conference to walk away empty-handed. What you want to do is present something that's viable, that's meaningful, and that translates into opportunity. And that's very, very critical at this time right now. So I think Chris has said it well, Yves has said it well. I do think we should spend just a little bit more time talking about the future. So Yves, you touched on pricing, you talked about improvements in the marketplace, and yet we're still dealing with 9% unemployment. The outlook is somewhat dim. We heard from Clear Capital last week, who keeps their finger on the pulse of the housing market and lending, that a triple dip in the housing market is not only probable, but likely to take place heading into next year. And this seems to run against the grain of what we had heard at the start of the year, that there'll be shoots of recovery popping up towards 4Q 2011, and that heading into 2012 we'll see some market stabilization and basically a retreat of foreclosures. Nobody seems to be saying that at this point. So is the outlook really that dim that we're in it for another 12 to 18 months of receding values, increased foreclosures, high vacancy rates, anemic sales, and again, all in the face of record low interest rates and liquidity that the banks are pumping out there? It's just we have no takers. So your thoughts quickly on what 2012 looks like for, if I'm a realtor, tell me what I need to be doing right now to stay afloat.
I don't want to create a self-fulfilling prophecy as we talk about how the economy is going down. We're going to cause it to go down because the fear of it going down is going to cause us to do something different. I think based on all the information you just shared, Ed, that it is an opportunity statement, at least from my perspective, because now with this cash infusion that's already there, it's sitting, waiting to get buyers involved, and we've already noted the 80,000 plus jobs that are created. So hopefully as we get further engaged and more entrenched in this neighborhood stabilization and we create jobs, and by the job creation, that may in and of itself act as a catalyst to help lead us out of where we are right now. So I look at it as that, yes, times are bad, times are gloomy, but it's a great time to start and continue this going 2012 and beyond.
So the trust has its own jobs program. Forget the Obama administration. You guys are coming out with your own cure for employment.
We're hoping that this is part of the cure, because we have the data show us that it's not just buying one house and leaving it alone. By buying that house, you create an opportunity not just for that initial transaction, but after the rehab, there's going to be an end buyer. So there has to be an end realtor that's going to be involved. Someone has to go ahead and service the loans. Someone has to finance the property. It has to be an inspector, appraisers, everything associated with real estate. So if you're talking about the potential of moving tens of thousands of properties and getting all of these people involved in the network, yes, this is going to be a job creation, because we all know that real estate industry can create a lot of jobs when it's rolling at its peak. This is time for it to start pushing it towards the peak.
Okay. Chris, any quick thoughts before we wrap up on where you think housing is going? And again, let's tie in why the WREN network, or how the WREN network can counter those conditions you're about to describe.
Certainly, just at a high level, I believe that the current economy, current housing market is going to be with us for a number more years. And I think that's why it's critical that there's a focus on providing solutions, alternatives with short sales. So that's why I think it's important to be part of things like the WREN network, to where short sales can be facilitated, negotiated by a servicer for the real estate agent and help them, help them be able to close those deals rather than them not be closed and head into an REO situation.
Well, let me, before I ask for closing remarks, I do want to wrap this up a bit. Here's what we're doing. We've decided to conduct this webinar. We've had the trust send representation in from Washington, D.C. We've aligned 3 corporate efforts to avail this program and the knowledge around this program to a very wide audience. We see this conference as the platform and delivery for not only information but for execution, and give you an opportunity to expand your network and your pipeline, and also your knowledge base. It's odd that we didn't say that from an entertainment value that former Secretary of State Dr. Condoleezza Rice will be delivering a keynote at this conference. 5 Star is also recognizing top women in mortgage and housing as part of the event. There are no less than 20 other courses being delivered over a 2-day span in Dallas. The venue is the Dallas Omni Hotel, which is a brand new facility in Dallas. Now, the cost of this conference normally runs $995 per person. Because of Wingspan's efforts, they are subsidizing a big part of the cost, and the fee to register is $595. That's an enormous savings to the audience, and we thank Wingspan for their generosity. If you need to learn more about the conference, please go to the5star.com/impact. All the information is there that we talked about on this call, including course descriptions. More importantly, should you choose to register, you can tab down on a promo code called Wingspan, and that will get you the discounted rate. That's very important to do, because if you don't do that, you'll end up paying the full rate, and nobody wants to do that right now.
And we also link to it from our website as well, WRENonline.com.
Perfect. So you have a couple options there. You can go to the5star.com/impact to register, or what's the Wingspan email address, Chris?
WREN Online.
WREN Online. Yves, any closing remarks for us?
I just look forward to seeing as many of you guys out there at the Impact Conference. I think it's going to be very exciting, educational, but most importantly, beneficial to everyone's bottom line.
Yep. Thank you. Chris?
Exactly. I look forward to seeing as many real estate agents and brokers as possible at the conference, and just building that relationship with them and helping them with whether NSB short sales or any other short sales in today's economy.
I'd like to thank our panelists, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming Impact Conference, December 4th through 6th in Dallas, Texas. Thank you.